everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Nina. I help people to declutter their minds and their homes using practical applications of psychology. And today we're talking all about the link between creativity and clutter. We'll talk about the psychology behind why creative people do tend to be so cluttery, and most importantly, offer realistic solutions coming from a fellow creative person who struggled with this very issue for years and years. So starting at the beginning, why do creative people tend to be more messy and cluttery? And I offer the caveat tend to be because of course there are exceptions to every rule, and some people may not even mind living in mess and clutter. But the way the creative brain works often does contribute to at least some degree of clutter, and the creative process itself, as we all know, can be extremely messy. So firstly, most artistic pursuits involve having a lot of necessary stuff, from supplies to equipment. So if you're a painter, you're going to need your brushes and your paints and your canvases. If you are a crafter, it's likely you have gathered all kinds of odds and ends over the years to help you create your masterpieces. Creative people also have more of an eye for spotting the possibility in things. So you may find something that other people think is complete junk, but have this real vision for it and feel like it would be a shame to throw it out because you know you could make it into something that would be beautiful and fabulous. And before you know it, your house is filled with all these future projects. Another issue for creative people is that we tend to get swept away in whatever we are working on. It becomes our life. So for example, if we're writing a novel, we're not going to want to pause the story to do the dishes or to fold the laundry. We're not going to feel like it's really a priority to do these mundane tasks because we're busy giving everything we have to our creative projects. So we usually say that we will worry about these things later, but for most of us, that later time never actually comes. And something else that I've found that is commonly overlooked is that there can often be a personality component to being creative. So creative people tend to score exceedingly high in the trait of openness to experience, which comes from the 5-factor model of personality. And if you're not really sure what I'm talking about, or if you want to see if you yourself score high in this trait, I will go ahead and link a video all about it in the description box below. But people who score high in this trait are not only inventive, imaginative, and creative, but they also have a strong aesthetic sensitivity. This means that we are going to be more appreciative of the things that we find to be beautiful, and we will be more affected by our physical environment. And sometimes we can even have an emotional connection to the art that we see. That's why sometimes we have a strong desire to rescue items when we see them in a thrift store or a boutique that we find to be uniquely beautiful, or we want to collect things that we find to be fascinating or special in some way. We tend to also have a lot of fun in the acquisition process, which can of course lead to us accumulating a lot of things. And then of course that leads us to want to display all these items because we view it as a piece of art. We think these things are valuable and they deserve to be seen. We may even personify them in some way. That's something that creative people often do. We give these items almost a personality or a history, which of course makes it a lot more difficult to let these things go. And lastly, sometimes being creative is linked to having ADHD and is often regarded as one of the very positive aspects of the disorder. But on the other side of the disorder is having difficulty with executive functioning skills that are often very necessary to staying clean and organized. So that can be playing a role as well. And something that goes right alongside with that is that many of us with ADHD, and just creative people I've found in general, tend to have a lot of special interests that quickly develop, where we all of a sudden have this intense fascination with something that we have this need to explore. And a lot of times we buy all of these accessories and all of these things to help us learn about it, and then we lose interest in it very, very quickly as well, sometimes at least. And that's a quick way for a lot of mess and clutter to come into our house because we have this passion that we feel that we need to fulfill. So if any of this sounds familiar, and I know it definitely did for me, what can we do about it? Well, I think firstly, we have to be realistic and understand that having a creative lifestyle will likely come with at least some degree of clutter, at least some of the time. The trick is to find a balance between being able to engage in all of our artistic pursuits and still being able to function and do things like find our keys. For many of us, this simply means creating a sense of order while still having access to our creative supplies and the things that do inspire us. Now, everyone is different, but I have come up with a list of things that I have found helpful as a creative person myself, and themes and ideas that have been very helpful to my creative clients. Before we start, however, I would definitely check out the video I made about ADHD clutter solutions, even if you do not have the disorder, because I have found that many of these same strategies are very beneficial for creatives. So I will link that down in the description box below so you have that resource. And with that being said, let's jump right in. Number one is to come up with a creative vision for the space. So this really involves having a mindset shift. So instead of thinking of cleaning and decluttering as something that makes you feel overwhelmed and anxious, think of it as a process for you to get excited about, a new project. Since you are artistic, think of this all as a masterpiece in the making. And if you do so, you are much more likely to be motivated to actually start to create what you are envisioning. Something else that I found is very helpful in this process is to actually write out all your ideas or sketch them out or cut out pictures or find them on Pinterest, and to print all this out and place it prominently in the spaces that you want to transform. This is going to, again, help you stay motivated, but also help you stay excited so you do not lose interest before these things are complete. Number two is to start decluttering the things that do not inspire you or bring joy. This is something that a lot of creative people just simply never get around to. Although some of us can have hoarding tendencies, it's not necessarily the case that we are attached to every single item in our home or every piece of paper. It's just that a lot of times we are spending our time and energy doing other things. So we kind of become blind to them and they start to accumulate. But when we finally do start to address these things, we usually find that there is a lot of junk that we don't care about that we can immediately get rid of that can give us some very necessary space back. The trick here is to start with the things that you obviously do not want or need at this point in your life, instead of starting to address the things that you're really not sure you want to get rid of at this point. There are plenty of things that are obvious, so definitely start there. If you start with those things or sentimental things, you're going to get frustrated, you're going to get anxious, and you will never finish this task. Also, don't forget that creative people really do tend to need to make tasks fun in order to be able to complete them. So think of entertaining things that you can do while you clean and declutter, such as listen to music, listen to a podcast, or better yet, invite someone over to help keep you company. Number three is to sort your art supplies and treasures by topic so you at least have a general area where things should go. Now, if you're like me and you cannot be bothered by small details, you can simply sort things out using bins with no covers and just kind of throw things in them as you find them. This is a great time to continue to discover what you have. A lot of times we have no idea what we have, and really identify the things that we're not excited about anymore or we're no longer going to need. The trick here is to get rid of these things immediately before they get lost in the shuffle once again. Number four is to get realistic about future projects. Now, this starts by making a huge list or actually gathering up all of the items that you have accumulated that you have told yourself that you are going to work on at some undisclosed time in the future. And then we need to get real with ourselves and ask ourselves if these really are things that we are still truly inspired by. Because there is limited time, we have limited energy. Are we really going to ever, if we haven't until this point, going to want to put the time and energy into completing whatever it is that we are intending to work on? Is this something that is truly going to happen in the future, or is this just clutter? We need to start freeing ourselves from any sense of obligation or duty to complete projects that we started a long time ago that we no longer care about, or to begin projects that no longer give us a sense of joy. We can accept the fact that at one point they probably did bring us a lot of joy. We felt a lot of excitement at the thought of completing these projects. But people do grow and change and evolve, and if these are things that no longer inspire us, we need to honor that and spend our time and spend energy on things that really do create joy for us and let go of these other things without guilt. Number 5 is to learn to appreciate without owning. Now, this one was a really hard concept for me, but it is absolutely possible to enjoy beautiful objects without actually bringing them into your home. And what we have to learn to do is to simply set limits. Now, of course, there's always going to be items that we find lovely and charming, so it's important that we have a system set in place ahead of time. So maybe that could mean that we only bring in one new treasure a month, or if we bring something into the home, we have to let something go. Or if it involves a project, maybe a rule could be we can't bring a new project in until we complete a project. Now, I like to have usually a couple projects going at the same time, but we can still use that principle. Our goal is to focus our time and energy on our current projects instead of scattering our attention elsewhere. And when we use this as a general rule, we're able to start new projects when we actually have the physical and mental space to do so. Number 6 is to try testing out interests before bringing a bunch of new stuff into your home. Now, I will give you a perfect example from my own life of what happens when we fail to do this. So about 10 years ago, I decided that I really wanted to learn how to sew, but instead of kind of warming up to the idea, I went in head first. I got a sewing machine and I got tons of fabric, like bins and bins of fabric. And then it just sat there for years. I never touched it. I never looked at it. I never even learned to thread the sewing machine. So instead, if I had gone to a friend's house and maybe used their sewing machine to see if this is something that I really did have patience for and something that I really did enjoy, or if I had started with hand sewing or something like that, I would have saved myself a lot of space and a lot of money if I had just done it that way. So learn from my mistake, test these things out before making any major investments and before cluttering up your home. And number 7 is to pack up any supplies or projects that you are not working on but not yet ready to abandon. So just gather everything up, stick it all in a box, and then clearly label it, and then put it either in the garage or a closet, but somewhere away from your living space. You want to try to give yourself as much clear space as possible so that you can not only have room for your creative projects, but also so you can have an aesthetic home. And again, once that is your goal, you're going to find that your home is your most rewarding art project of all. So those are the biggest concepts that I have found to be specifically helpful for creatives who struggle with clutter. But of course, there are other issues and habits that can lead to clutter and disorganization. So I will go ahead and link down an entire playlist in the description box below that has to do with the psychology behind clutter and disorganization and effective solutions, because this is something that I struggled with for years, so I can completely relate. I would also love to hear what your artistic pursuits are and any creative projects that you are currently working on, so don't forget to leave a comment down below. As always, I truly hope you found today's video to be helpful and insightful. If you did, please like it, share it, and definitely become a subscriber if you aren't one already. I would absolutely love it if you stayed connected. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I hope the rest of your day is extraordinary.